Do you notice how your words change after tiny pauses and gentle corrections? What if every reply becomes a mirror that reflects their design, not yours? If you want your mind steady and untouched, listen with full attention. Language can be turned into a steering wheel, and control begins with framing. Framing decides what the conversation is even about before content appears. The manipulator sets a frame where your words must fit or look wrong. You feel a vague pressure to answer inside their frame, not your own. They offer a small summary that sounds reasonable, then invite a tiny agreement. Once you nod, the frame hardens, and your later words orbit that center. The next lever is ambiguity that serves one side only, hidden inside clarity. They use broad phrases that cover many meanings but punish only one outcome. If you protest, they claim you misunderstood, because the phrase can shift. This keeps you busy chasing definitions, while their intent stays protected. Your energy drains into decoding, and their position remains strangely safe. You keep engaging because it feels close to resolution, but never arrives. Micro-agreements build a staircase that leads to unwanted conclusions. Each step looks harmless. Each question sounds fair. Each answer seems obvious. After enough steps, they present a conclusion that matches those prior answers. You hesitate because the path feels consistent, and hesitation looks inconsistent. You are pushed by your own desire for internal consistency, not by truth. They are not forcing you. You are moving to avoid cognitive dissonance. There is a tactic that edits memory through selective emphasis and rehearsal. Moments that help their frame are repeated often, sharpened, and emotionally highlighted. Moments that hurt their frame are softened, skipped, or labeled as minor. Memory follows attention, and attention follows what is rehearsed with feeling. They do not need to lie. They only need to spotlight and dim. Over time, your recall becomes sculpted, and the sculptor denies touching stone. Watch the precision of labels, because labeling is silent architecture for belief. A label compresses a complex event into a tiny emotional signal. Say a situation is messy and nuance turns into an easy dismissal. Call a boundary harsh, and protection looks like cruelty without changing facts. Labels guide reactions before logic starts, and logic then justifies the mood. If you accept the label, the rest of the discussion rearranges itself. There is a move called preemptive reframing through future blame. They predict you will misread them, so they paint themselves as careful. Now, any objection looks like you delivered the predicted misreading. You feel defensive, then you explain more, then your points look reactive. Their prediction becomes proof, not because it was right, but because you responded. That loop locks your credibility inside their forecast, while theirs escapes testing. Notice loaded questions that contain a verdict before you speak. The question forces you to defend yourself, not present your view. Even a careful answer keeps the focus on their embedded assumption. You argue within their wording, and your silence also looks guilty. The best move is to reject the smuggled verdict and reset terms. Answer only after the hidden charge is removed, or refuse the premise. Shifting goalposts manufacture fatigue that looks like your failure. You meet one condition, then the condition changes quietly. You provide detail, then they say it is too much detail. You provide brevity, then they say it lacks substance. Your mind keeps working to satisfy a moving target and grows tired. Tired minds concede language, and ceded language reshapes perception without resistance. Mirroring is often healthy, yet it can become a blade in velvet. A manipulative mirror returns your exact words with a colder temperature. The reflection seems neutral, but it subtly casts doubt on your tone. You start rewriting sentences to sound softer, then clearer, then shorter. Your natural cadence is replaced by their preferred rhythm and pacing. The new rhythm becomes the new normal, and your instincts feel wrong. Certainty is a tool that overrides your inner signal of uncertainty. Some people speak with low variance, steady pace, and high lexical confidence. The nervous system reads that pattern as probable accuracy, even without evidence. Then your cautious phrasing sounds unsure, even when your facts are sound. The conversation favors the voice with fewer hesitations, not the stronger logic. You start borrowing their certainty, and you pay with your independent appraisal. Context stripping turns complex reality into narrow judgment. They isolate one line, one moment, one reaction, and hold it up. They ask why that piece looks wrong, without its surrounding information. You defend the piece, but the whole picture remains offstage. Later they restore context, selectively, proving your defense looks incomplete. The trick works because the mind treats isolated fragments as full scenes. There is a move of plausible retreat that looks like generosity. They withdraw an earlier claim but keep the emotional imprint unchanged. The words retreat, The effect stays, and you feel strangely relieved. Relief stops you from noticing the imprint did not actually dissolve. Later, the same imprint is used as quiet evidence against your position. You remember the relief, not the residue that kept shaping conclusions. The fatigue loop is the engine behind most twisting. A loop needs inputs and a reward, and here the reward is control. The inputs are tiny confusions, small contradictions, and endless clarifications. Each loop drains attention, which is the currency of stable thinking. Without attention, you cannot track frames, labels, or shifts. Then surrender feels like peace, and peace is misread as agreement. Now look at emotional pacing, because pacing modulates your willingness to push back. They alternate warmth and coolness at precise intervals like a thermostat. Warmth opens you, coolness tightens you. The alternation keeps you off balance. Your system seeks a steady climate, so you work harder to stabilize. That extra work converts into compliance because stability feels urgent. The thermostat is hidden, yet your responses rise and fall on cue. Silence can be louder than any sentence, and it carries verdicts. Strategic silence arrives after your strongest point, not your weakest. You expect respect or debate, but receive a quiet vacuum. The vacuum suggests your point was either obvious or unworthy. You rush to explain more, and additional words create new handles. Those handles are used to twist your claim into something easier to dismiss. Watch for the rescue frame that appears as patience and guidance. They explain your position back to you, with slight but crucial edits. You feel seen, because hearing your language feels soothing. Then you agree with their edited version because it sounds close enough. Agreement with the edit becomes disagreement with your original point. The rescuer becomes the editor of your intentions, and you accept the draft. Some twists rely on time pressure that is never named. The pace accelerates through quick-check questions that demand immediate answers. Speed favors whatever is already framed. Slow thought cannot reframe in time. You accept their shortcuts because speed suggests urgency and importance. Later, when you finally slow down, the path is already paved. Reversing a paved path is harder than refusing to step initially. The boundary erosion pattern is simple and therefore powerful. First, boundaries are praised as wise and balanced, which lowers your guard. Second, a single exception is requested, positioned as rare and harmless. Third, the exception reappears with slightly broader scope each time. You are told you already agreed to the principle, which sounds true. The original boundary remains in name, but its function is gone. Notice how deficits are assigned through questions rather than claims. Are you certain you understood? Sounds like curiosity, but implies incompetence. Would you agree that clarity is missing? Sounds neutral, but marks you lacking. Are you comfortable with your conclusion? Sounds kind, but signals recklessness. Questions write quiet evaluations into your self-image because you answer them. After enough questions, you begin grading yourself with their internal rubric. Now the antidotes must be built like a counter-manual, precise and calm. First, confirm frames before content. Ask what the conversation is truly about. State the frame you accept, and refuse the frame you will not. Do this with short sentences and steady breath, without extra explanation. Second, define terms on first use, and request parallel definitions from them. Write definitions down during serious matters because writing prevents memory edits. Third, expose loaded questions by stating the hidden verdict plainly. Say the question contains an assumption you do not accept. Offer to answer after the assumption is removed or revised. Fourth, fix goalposts by recording the criteria before work begins. When criteria shift, pause the process and return to the earlier record. No record, no progress, because progress without edges cannot be measured. Fifth, separate tone from content using a simple two-track response. State you will address tone later, then focus on content first. This prevents tone debates from swallowing the substance of your position. Sixth, protect attention with deliberate pacing and scheduled pauses. Announce short breaks when confusion rises, because confusion fuels twisting. A rested mind sorts frames faster and denies easy leverage. Seventh, rebuild memory with balanced rehearsal. Repeat the moments that oppose their preferred conclusion with equal emotion. Say them aloud, write them, and anchor them with steady breathing. Your mind remembers what is felt, not only what is known. Eighth, refuse edits of your intention and present your own version. If someone summarizes you, affirm only what matches your real position. Ninth, treat silence as a cue for nothing. Do not rush, do not fill, let silence expire without payment. When silence carries a verdict, ask for the verdict in words. 10th, countertime pressure with a default slowdown rule. Any decision that affects your values deserves measured consideration. If urgency is claimed, require concrete reasons, not vague importance. There is also the mirror restoration exercise that resets your natural cadence. Speak one paragraph in your own rhythm, then read it back twice. Compare how it feels against the forced pacing from earlier interactions. Rehearse until your cadence returns, because cadence is the skeleton of thought. A steady skeleton holds meaning upright. A bent skeleton collapses under pressure. Protect cadence, and you protect the clarity that twisting tries to dissolve. The emotional drain has early signals that appear inside your body first. Notice sudden heaviness behind the eyes after small exchanges. Notice shallow breathing while answering very simple questions. Notice the urge to over-explain when asked for one sentence. These are not personality flaws. They are system alarms of manipulation. Answer alarms with boundaries, pauses, and specific requests for definitions. Do not fight every tactic. Choose leverage points that reset the whole field. Frames, definitions, records, and pacing create a stable platform for sense-making. From that platform, most twisting loses traction, because traction needs confusion. Your goal is not victory. Your goal is intact perception. Once perception is intact, choices become cleaner and energy returns. You do not need the last word. You need the right frame. Guard your curiosity, but keep it from becoming compliance dressed as openness. Curiosity asks questions. Compliance accepts premises without inspection. Practice questions that explore without surrendering the ground beneath them. What are we assuming here? Is a good doorway question. What would change your mind is a test of genuine dialogue. When answers avoid change, you are not in a real exchange. Remember, no tactic is mystical. Each depends on attention and permission. Withdraw permission when language smuggles conclusions, and hold attention for essentials. If the other side values clarity, cooperation increases. If the other side values control, clarity exposes their intent. Either way, your steadiness returns, because you decide how meaning is handled. Your words stop orbiting foreign gravity, and your center becomes audible again. Now ask yourself one strict question, and listen without decoration. If their frame vanished today, would your conclusions stay the same tomorrow? Or have your judgments been quietly replaced while you were busy defending the... Do you ever notice how some people never answer, yet always redirect your answer? What if every conversation you enter is already tilted before you speak? If you want to protect your inner compass, stay alert from the first word. Twisting does not begin with words. It begins with anticipation. The manipulator studies your patterns, not your opinions. They learn what you defend, what you avoid, what you rush to explain. Then they build a conversational maze that uses your own habits as traps. You think you are expressing yourself, but you are walking a path they mapped. The first defense is awareness, that every answer reveals a pattern. There is a silent rule in their system: never let the topic settle. Settled topics create clarity, and clarity ends control. So they keep shifting angles, sliding from logic to emotion, from detail to general. Your brain tries to follow because humans chase completion by nature, but completion is removed each time you reach for it. The cycle of almost finished drains more energy than open conflict. You will also see selective memory presented as fairness. They recall only the moments that support their position, in sharp detail. They forget the parts that weaken it and act surprised you remember them. Their surprise makes you doubt your own recall, even when you are correct. Doubt slows your speech, and slow speech loses social advantage. You start rechecking your mind instead of defending your point. Another lever is emotional reframing through tone contrast. They use calm tone when they distort and slightly tense tone when you clarify. The listener's body trusts calmness over correctness, because calmness feels safer. Your clear statements look aggressive next to their measured delivery. Now you appear emotional, while they appear reasonable, without any logic change. Tone becomes an invisible judge, and logic becomes a silent prisoner. There is also the one-line agreement trick, which disarms your guard. They agree with one small part of your point in a generous way. You relax because agreement signals shared ground. Then they insert the twist in the next sentence while your guard is still lowered. Your brain tags the whole exchange as cooperative, even when it is not. This is compliance by rhythm, not by reason. Watch how meaning is bent by false neutrality. They say things like, "Everyone is a little wrong here," even when that is untrue. False balance makes you accept partial blame, just to appear fair. Once you accept even a symbolic portion of blame, they anchor the rest on you. The blame grows while your right to defend shrinks because you already conceded. Neutral tone is not neutral intent. The next tactic is future framing through predictive doubt. They tell you that you will probably misunderstand what comes next. Now you listen with guilt instead of curiosity. If you question them later, it looks like proof that you misunderstood. Your resistance confirms their preloaded narrative, not your actual reasoning. Belief is shaped before information is even given. There is a layer called emotional taxation, and it works through confusion cost. Every unclear sentence forces your brain to burn energy decoding it. Once tired, the brain accepts the simplest path, not the truest one. That path usually benefits the one who created the confusion. They do not win by argument, they win by exhaustion. A tired mind accepts any door that promises rest. Notice apology inversion, where they apologize in a way that blames you. Sorry you feel that way signals regret without responsibility. The apology frames your reaction as the problem, not their action. You feel petty if you keep explaining the harm because they already apologized. Now the burden shifts from their behavior to your sensitivity. The twist is complete and they walk away with moral credit. Another pattern is invitation to justify, not to explain. Explanation presents ideas. Justification defends identity. The manipulator pushes you into defending identity, not sharing perspective. Once identity is tied to the debate, you become emotional, not analytical. They then call you emotional, using your defensive tone as evidence. Meanwhile, they never had to share their own reasoning at all. You will also see forced binary questioning, a trap disguised as clarity. They ask, so are you saying this or that? Both options are twisted and neither reflects your meaning. But you feel pressured to choose, because rejecting both seems evasive. The trick works because humans prefer imperfect clarity over prolonged ambiguity. But accepting a false frame is the first step toward a false conclusion. There is a psychological lock called credibility swap. They attach your valid point to an invalid comparison, then attack the comparison. Your idea collapses, not because it was weak, but because it was misfiled. People watching the exchange forget the original point and remember the collapse. The manipulator walks away with credibility they never earned. They did not destroy the logic. They destroyed the filing cabinet. Observe how certainty is weaponized. A confident lie sounds more solid than a hesitant truth. Truth often carries uncertainty because truth allows nuance. The manipulator removes nuance, and the audience reads that as strength. Then they accuse you of overthinking, while they underthink with authority. Certainty without depth is the oldest psychological shortcut to control. There is a deeper move called emotional outsourcing. They provoke a feeling in you, then blame you for having it. If you get angry, your anger becomes their evidence. If you stay silent, your silence becomes their evidence. Every reaction is framed against you while they appear stable. They outsource the emotional labor and collect the moral profit. Look for the casual dismissal phrase. It usually ends with anyway. It signals that your point has been noted and silently buried. The word anyway resets the conversation back to their agenda. You either protest and look obsessive, or accept burial and lose the thread. Either path favors the one who dismissed, not the one who reasoned. Dismissal beats debate when done with relaxed confidence. You must understand the tactic of time extension through false patience. They say, take your time, while knowing the situation punishes delay. Your carefulness becomes a liability. Their quickness becomes an advantage. By the time you respond with precision, the social moment has passed. People remember the silence, not the insight that followed. Timing is not neutral. Timing shapes narrative. Watch for identity merging, the softest manipulation of all. They say we often, when they mean you should. Alignment language hides directives inside togetherness. You agree to unity, not realizing unity contains obedience. When you finally refuse, they accuse you of breaking the bond. Unity without choice is only decor wrapped around control. The antidote is not aggression. The antidote is structure. Structure removes the fog where twisting thrives. First, separate claim from tone, always in that order. Write the claim in one clear sentence, then evaluate tone separately. Do not let tone override fact, and do not let fact excuse abuse. Second, require definitions before debate. Ask what they mean by words like respect, fairness, clarity, or harm. If the definition keeps shifting, lock the discussion until it stops. Most twisting collapses once definitions are pinned. Third, track the original question like a thread. Each time it drifts, calmly return to it with a single sentence. Twisting hates repetition because repetition exposes drift. Do not add emotion, just repeat the thread until it reappears. Fourth, refuse binary forcing. When asked if it is this or that, reply with neither. Here is my frame. Do not explain why the binary is wrong, just replace it. Replacement beats rejection, because rejection invites more pressure. Fifth, set pacing rights. Say, I will answer after I process this fully. Pace is power and rushed minds lose ground. Slow rhythm is not weakness, it is mental armor. Sixth, protect recall with physical anchors. Write key points or record agreements out loud. Memory cannot be twisted if it is external and visible. External memory protects internal clarity. Seventh, do not defend feelings, defend interpretations. Feelings are valid but undefendable. Interpretations can be tested. Shift the conversation from emotion about events to meaning of events. Meaning is where twisting lives and where twisting can be exposed. Eighth, return labels to sender. If they call your boundary harsh, ask what gentle would look like. Do not deny the label, force them to define it. Definitions reveal motives, and motives reveal manipulation. Ninth, hold silence as a tool, not a surrender. Silence can be neutral if you choose it, not react to it. Count slow breaths. Let the silence land on them, not on you. When you speak again, speak on your timing, not theirs. 10th, end loops by declaring a finish line. Say, I have stated my position clearly. I will not repeat it. Loops break when repetition stops being rewarded. The manipulator depends on your re-explaining. Deny the loop, and the loop collapses. Now a deeper question must surface, the kind that shakes comfort. Are you defending your clarity, or are you trying to win their approval? Because approval is the gateway through which twisting always returns. Do you ever feel tired after a simple conversation? As if your mind walked a long distance without moving? What if the real drain is not the topic, but the hidden structure beneath it? If you want to keep your inner voice unbent, learn how the structure traps you. The most silent weapon in conversational control is selective escalation. They choose which points to react to strongly and which to ignore completely. Escalation makes one detail look huge, while the ignored parts fade away. You start defending the escalated detail and forget the real subject. Now the conversation is about a tiny branch, not the whole tree. Distraction looks like intensity, but the intensity is only a mask. Another tactic is the soft contradiction loop. They disagree, but never fully explain why. The disagreement is vague enough to keep you chasing clarity. You repeat your point in new ways, trying to remove confusion. But every new explanation gives them more material to twist later. You do the work, they harvest the angles. Watch closely when someone says, I see your point, but that phrase does not accept your point, it temporarily parks it. The unspoken rule is, your view is acknowledged only for display, not for impact. The word but erases the first half of the sentence in emotional memory. Your brain hears dismissal, even if the words look polite. Polite rejection is still rejection, only harder to expose. There is a strategy called reality compression. They take a complex situation and summarize it in one neat sentence. The neatness feels efficient, but efficiency costs truth. Once the complex becomes simple, your deeper reasoning looks exaggerated. You look like the one making things complicated, even when reality is complex. The compressed version wins, not because it is accurate, but because it is smaller. Observe the deflection of proof. They demand evidence only when your point threatens their structure. When they speak, evidence becomes optional because confidence fills the gap. You bring facts, they bring tone, and tone often wins the room. The result is absurd, yet common. The person with facts feels cornered. Facts without frame are like seeds on concrete, unable to root. Another method is identity echo. They repeat a value you hold, then attach their argument to that value. You respect honesty, so they call their version honesty. You value peace, so they call your objection disruption. Your own values are used against you, like emotional leverage points. The echo makes you hesitate because refusing feels like betraying yourself. Look for the invisible clock. They keep the debate going until you are tired, then propose a conclusion. You accept, not because it is fair, but because you need the discussion to end. Exhaustion pretends to be agreement, and agreement turns into precedent. Next time, they will say, you already agreed before. Fatigue becomes evidence, and the cycle repeats. Notice the placement of compliments. They do not praise your clarity, they praise your flexibility. They do not praise your self-respect, they praise your willingness to adjust. The compliment rewards the behavior that benefits them, not the one that protects you. You chase the praise and slowly abandon your own lines in the sand. Compliments become invisible chains when they shape your next decision. There is also the narrative of intention purity. They claim their motives are clean, so your reaction must be the issue. This trick forces you to defend your emotional response instead of the original problem. Once the focus shifts to your reaction, their action goes untouched. Purity of intention is presented as immunity. Even without accountability, words clean intent, and cleaned intent erases consequence. Be cautious with questions that sound like curiosity, but feel like audits. Questions such as, "Why do you think that?" or "Are you sure you remember?" The real goal is not knowledge, but to plant uncertainty. Once you start doubting your own thinking, their logic becomes the default safety. Doubt makes dependence, and dependence makes control invisible. A twisted mind does not feel trapped. It feels guided. Linguistic fog is another tool, built from vague words like some, many, people say. These words carry weight without a source and shape pressure without proof. You feel forced to explain, while they stay safe behind general language. You defend against ghosts, while they stay untouched in the fog. Vagueness is a shield that blocks accountability, not misunderstanding. Next is the soft reset maneuver. When cornered, they do not argue back, they suggest starting over. Starting over feels healthy, but it erases the progress you made. They restart without the parts that trapped them earlier. Each reset is a quiet delete button for your strongest points. They collect advantages, while you keep losing saved progress. The deeper layer is emotional baiting. They give a subtle insult wrapped inside a calm sentence. You react to the insult, and they act confused about your reaction. Now you look unstable, and they look centered. You go from explaining the issue to proving you are not overreacting. They pull the trigger. You hold the smoke. The antidotes must now evolve from reaction to prevention. First, separate exhaustion from agreement. Never agree while tired. Say you will respond when your mind is clear. Clarity is a weapon when timing is yours. Second, refuse emotional audits. When asked, "Why are you upset?" answer with what needs to change, not how you feel. Feelings can be dismissed, but requested changes demand response. Third, challenge vague claims with tight questions. Ask, "Who said this? How many? When? Where?" Vagueness dies under precision, and precision exposes manipulation. Fourth, freeze the reset trick. Say, "We will continue," but not by erasing what was already established. If they refuse, the refusal becomes proof of their tactic. Fifth, do not defend your identity when the topic is your point. Identity debates are unwinnable because identity is infinite. Return to the claim. Always the claim, never your character. Sixth, treat compliments as data, not medicine. Ask, what behavior is being rewarded and by whom? If the praise pulls you away from your principles, it is a leash, not a gift. Seventh, carry an internal rule, no conclusion under pressure. Pressure is not urgency, pressure is strategy. Remove pressure, and truth becomes visible again. Now the next question must dig deeper, one that cannot be ignored. If their approval vanished forever, would you still speak the same truth? Or has your voice already started shaping itself to stay acceptable? Do you ever notice how some people highlight one tiny flaw and ignore the entire truth behind it? What if the goal was never to understand you, only to shrink your voice? If you want to stay unshaped by invisible hands, you must learn the deeper layers. The fourth layer of twisting is not in words, but in sequence. Most people think manipulation is about what is said, but it is really about when it is said. One delayed question can erase a strong point. One early accusation can poison a clean idea. Sequence turns logic into illusion because the brain remembers order more than accuracy. Win the sequence, and you do not need to win the argument. Notice the tactic of emotional priming. Before you speak, they set an emotional temperature in the room. They might sigh, lower tone, or hint at past disappointments. Now you speak inside their mood, not inside your clarity. Your message becomes stained before it is even born. This is not persuasion. This is atmosphere control. The next tactic is mock validation. They say, "I understand what you mean," even when they do not. The sentence looks respectful, but it blocks further explanation. You feel heard, so you stop clarifying, and they gain room to redefine your point. False validation is a pause button, not a bridge. There is also the freeze and flip method. They freeze one of your sentences in time, remove the context, then flip its meaning. Your deeper reasoning disappears, and the one frozen line becomes your entire identity. You defend the line. They attack the shadow of the line. You lose, not because you were wrong, but because the battlefield was replaced. Watch the coercive calm pattern. They stay calm even when twisting you. You raise your voice because the unfairness is real. Now the focus is not the twist, but your tone. You become the emotional one, they become the balanced one. Tone becomes proof, not logic. Another move is strategic agreement delay. They hold back agreement until you over-explain. The longer you talk, the more handles they collect for future use. When they finally agree, it feels like a reward, not a normal response. Your brain now attaches compliance to relief. Relief becomes the leash. They may also use reflective destabilization. They repeat your exact words back to you, but with a different tone. Suddenly your sentence sounds harsh or foolish, even though you just said it. You start self-editing to avoid that feeling again. Your voice changes shape, but not because you chose growth, only because you feared reflection. There is a sharp tactic called delayed claim reversal. They agree with you at first, then later act as if you changed position. Your mind scrambles to prove you were consistent, and the burden shifts. While you explain continuity, they introduce a new twist. You defend yesterday, they rewrite today. The most exhausting twist is cognitive stacking. They stack 3 or 4 small confusions in a row, each too small to confront alone. But together they destabilize your sense of direction. You feel something is wrong, but cannot point at one clear violation. This confusion is not accidental. It is engineered fog. Watch for the invisible scoreboard. They keep count of how many times you were wrong, but never count their own contradictions. The score is not spoken, but it shapes how they treat you. You start debating from a lower position without even noticing. The scoreboard is fake, but your reaction to it is real. Another tactic is emotional hostage framing. They say things like, "I just want peace," or "I hate conflict." Now your clarity becomes the cause of conflict, and their twisting becomes the pursuit of peace. Peace becomes a weapon used to punish honesty. Truth feels rude and manipulation feels gentle. Observe the intellectual mirror trap. They pretend to think as deeply as you, but always return to shallow conclusions. You respect depth, so you keep giving more depth. But depth becomes a well where only you fall. They stay on the surface and say, "See, you are overcomplicating it again." You drown in logic. They float on narrative. The antidotes at this level must be structural, not emotional. First, break the emotional priming by naming it. Say, "The mood seems heavy, let us stay with facts." Naming the atmosphere resets the room. Second, refuse frozen lines. Say, "That sentence is incomplete without the rest of what I said." Do not defend the fragment, restore the whole. Third, separate calmness from correctness. Say, "Tone is not proof, clarity is proof." This sentence ends the calm truth illusion. Fourth, set a cap on explanation. State your point once clearly, then refuse to repeat it in new forms. Repetition is not clarity. Repetition is entanglement. Fifth, dissolve false peace. Say, "Peace without honesty is not peace, it is pressure." This removes their ability to weaponize harmony. Sixth, reject emotional debt. You do not owe softness when facing distortion. Softness is a choice, not a tax. Seventh, rotate the mirror back. Ask them to restate their claim, not yours. Mirrors work both ways when you hold them still. Eighth, expose stacking by grouping. Say, "These are 3 different points. We will handle them one by one." Stacking dies when broken into single threads. Ninth, reset the scoreboard. Say, "Accuracy matters, not who was right last time." This kills the invisible hierarchy. 10th, declare pause rights. Say, "I will answer after reflection." A paused mind is a protected mind. Now a sharper question waits at the edge of awareness. Are you trying to be understood, or are you trying not to be judged? Because the second goal is the door through which every twist enters. Do you ever feel like you are fixing a misunderstanding that was never real? What if the confusion was created only to make you defend yourself? If you want to stay mentally untangled, learn to spot the trap early. The core trick in this stage is idea shrinking. They reduce your full point into one weak line, then attack the small version. You end up defending something you never meant in the first place. Next is emotion tagging. They attach a negative feeling to your action, and the label replaces the truth. Your boundary becomes rude, your logic becomes harsh, your calm becomes cold. Then comes strategic confusion. They pretend your point is unclear, so you keep simplifying it. Each rewrite makes your meaning easier to twist. The final move is sweetened contradiction. They praise your intelligence, then say you are still slightly wrong. The compliment makes you accept the pushback without resistance. Antidotes must be small and firm. 1. Refuse to defend the reduced version of your point. 2. Ask for judgment on action, not emotion. 3. Stop explaining once you are already clear. 4. Treat compliments as irrelevant during disagreement. Now the question that decides everything: are you clarifying the truth, or are you quietly negotiating your worth? Do you ever notice how some conversations end with you silent? Not because you agree, but because your mind feels emptied. What if silence is not peace, but the final stage of mental extraction? If you want your voice to return, you must understand the last layer. The sixth and deepest layer of twisting is identity erosion through repetition. They do not attack your ideas. They attack your right to hold them. Once the holder is questioned, the thought collapses without effort. You start thinking, maybe the problem is me, not the twist. That is not doubt. That is psychological capture. Next comes internalized monitoring. You begin editing your words before speaking to avoid conflict or judgment. The manipulator no longer needs to twist you because you twist yourself first. This is the moment control becomes self-service. There is also meaning inversion. Your strength becomes stubbornness. Your patience becomes weakness. Your logic becomes coldness. They do not change facts. They change the story around the facts. If they own the story, they own the conclusion. Then arrives the most subtle trap: false harmony. The chaos stops, the pushback ends, and everything feels calm. You think the issue is resolved, but the silence is just your surrender. Manipulation does not always end in argument. Sometimes it ends in quiet obedience. The final weapon is self-doubt disguised as maturity. You start believing that staying silent is growth, letting things go is wisdom, and questioning is overthinking. Your self-respect gets recoded as ego, your boundaries as drama. They did not defeat you, they redefined you. But the counter-manual still exists, and it begins with one truth: clarity is not aggression. Self-respect is not arrogance. Silence is not always peace. The antidotes for the final layer are internal, not external. 1. Restore private clarity. Write your real thoughts somewhere no one can edit. Private truth rebuilds internal spine. 2. Separate value from approval. If your worth depends on being understood, you will always bend. 3. Reclaim the right to take space. Your thoughts do not need to be minimized to stay valid. 4. Return to definitions you trust. If they redefine respect, define it back. 5. Treat self-doubt as a signal, not a verdict. Doubt means pause, not surrender. And the final line of defense: you do not need to win the conversation. You only need to refuse the frame. Once the frame collapses, the twist cannot survive. Now the last question, the one that decides whether twisting will ever work again. Do you want to be understood, or do you want to stay unaltered?